I run Script, which is mostly a creative agency. We do music branding, marketing for various things, but we also try to have a very strong innovation R&D end to that same equation. I used to work as a music producer, worked in the record industry for about 10 years. I worked with lots of fairly big artists. And so we decided as one of the first things for the business to do is we really wanted to look at whether apps are any good as an album distribution format. It's not a new idea. We're not pretending we invented it. There have been some notable things already in the market, Bjork's principally being ground zero as far as I'm concerned. We wanted to look at quite a broad swathe of questions and issues within the industry. Consumer desire being the number one. Do people actually want it? Are they very expensive to make? Yes, they bloody well are. Can we get that down? Lots of difficulties around royalties, IP, how people are paid. Bit more of a niche thing, apps aren't chart eligible. Massive problem for record labels. How do we distribute them? And what are the creative opportunities actually of the format for artists? Can they get excited about it? Why did we get into it? It's a very complex issue. You talk to a lot of people in record labels and they say, yeah, that's great, of course. It's a no-brainer for most people. But there are lots of stakeholders and there's not any multilateral effort or coercive effort to get this thing solved. The issue being that obviously revenues are falling, music industry is one of the first things to suffer from digital, internet, piracy, etc., etc. So, can we get all these people to slightly agree? We shall see. But in that, it's a commercial and a creative question. So we're trying to push the business model into a place that it starts to look viable. We're trying to test the consumer desire, see what the artistic fit is for music artists, and the most important thing, where is our break-even point if we can get it all into a place? Royalty agreements, as I said before, and distribution are big problems. There are big players with very powerful interests, particularly Apple and Google. And the royalties models, particularly around music publishing, are a bit antiquated, so we're trying to fix that. There's a very interesting thing in putting an app developer in front of a music artist. They know how to talk to a record producer or an engineer, but what on earth is a C# coder? Most music artists would throw their hands in the air. So we wanted to get into that. What are the opportunities? What are the difficulties? How are we getting through to a viable place on that? And then on a wider level, this is not just about the music industry. This could be, if we get to that critical point on the break-even in the business model, something that the wider arts industry we think could use. Why hasn't it been done before? As I said, it is a very complicated thing. There are lots of people with slightly opposing views within the same industry. As a blanket statement, music format innovation was Apple's job. They invented iTunes, they invented the iPod, and then they stopped. They had a very lame duck moment of producing the iTunes LP, wasn't mobile optimized, and then they stopped. And then Steve Jobs died, and that's the end. Music industry is obviously also very risk averse, as are most industries, but particularly because of that digital piracy issue. And the multiple stakeholders is a thing. They're all fighting each other for a piece of the pie. And I'll get on to particularly music publishers. The wider arts sector benefit, apps are good, despite being expensive, for a controlled channel. So you can get to a place where you give your audience a fairly privileged view, quite exclusive view, through that channel if you can get the development cost down. So we think it can be quite compelling. It is a good format with its problems, but it's a good format to distribute arts content, so particularly in music. A reduction in production costs is the number one goal on the do it with the grant, but we think it has pertinence for fine artists, for photographers particularly, maybe even live performance. So. As I said, it's less prone to piracy than sticking an HTML5 app or a microsite app, so that's a good thing as far as protection of the IP. It really can, I think, provide a very unique consumer experience if you build it well, and there are lots of terrible apps out there, and building a good one does, unfortunately, cost money. Key challenges, stakeholders with no commercial imperative to figure it out. Music publisher says, I want this, and the record label says, I want that, and they can't figure it out. The whole record industry being beholden to Apple and Google, particularly to get to the next stage. Everyone agrees the formats are broken. An MP3 and a stream has maybe a tiny piece of artwork, and that's it. Nothing else around it, no lyrics, and nothing of the extra that we could get with all the technology at our disposal. One of the big challenges for me was that I had to become a music lawyer almost. I didn't know enough about IP. I'd worked in the industry for 10 years, but I had to get in down and dirty with the details. Interesting difference of opinion amongst music publishers on interpretations of royalty agreements. Had to unpick that. That took me quite a while. And generally, as I said, music artists know nothing about app development, so let's try and introduce them to it. And that actually turned into a great thing. Learnings to date. Consumer desire is definitely there. We've done focus groups with the proof of concept that we built. triple the number of people by the end of the session would consider buying music as an app. Music publishers are making it a difficult thing. They have this right about lyrics, which isn't part of PRS, isn't part of the General Collection Society thing, and they're being bullish about it. That's an issue. We worked with a French artist called Francois on the Atlas Mountains. He has, kid you not, 2 apps on his phone, and he came up with a fantastic concept for further discovery of the record. So working with someone who knows nothing, in theory, is a really good way to innovate. We did solve the chart eligibility issue. It was a little bit of a hack, but we did produce the world's first chart-eligible album app. Cost of production can be reduced. Cross-platform remains a problem. We did do it on iOS only for music industry reasons. But if we can get to a point where full adoption, we can get people around the round table going, all right, this actually is good because of the reason at the top. The consumer desire is definitely there. So to wrap up, I invite you to discover this. We're very proud of it. And yes, that's all I have to say. Thanks.